Maya adjusted her uniform in the small crew cabin of Skywing's Flight 742. She had worked as a flight attendant for nearly 4 years, and she knew most routines by heart. Still, some flights had a way of feeling different. This morning the sun shone brightly over the city, glinting off the airport glass as passengers hurried across the terminal. The smell of coffee and fresh pastries filled the air, and the hum of announcements created a constant rhythm of motion. Maya's shift had started early. She had checked the flight manifest, reviewed safety protocols, and helped coordinate luggage and supplies for the journey. Everything seemed ordinary until she noticed a new batch of passengers boarding the plane. Among them was Daniel, a calm, composed man in his early 30s. He had a small notebook tucked under his arm and a thoughtful expression. He smiled politely at Maya as he passed, nodding slightly, and settled into his seat by the window. Other passengers trickled in, some chatting excitedly, some looking tired, and some absorbed in their phones. A young boy no more than 7 peeked curiously at the cabin through his mother's arm. Maya greeted each passenger with a polite smile, offering assistance where needed. She felt a strange sense of anticipation as she moved down the aisle, arranging seatbelts and ensuring everything was in place. Once the plane doors were closed, the captain's voice came through the speakers. "Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. This is Captain Rivera speaking. We are ready for takeoff. Please fasten your seatbelts and remain seated until the seatbelt sign is turned off. We hope you enjoy a comfortable flight with Skywings Airlines." The engines roared to life, and soon the plane was rolling down the runway. Maya secured herself in her cabin seat for takeoff, feeling the familiar vibration of the aircraft beneath her. As the plane lifted into the clouds, a sense of calm mixed with responsibility settled over her. When the seatbelt sign turned off, Maya moved into the aisle, pushing the cart filled with breakfast trays. The cabin smelled of coffee, scrambled eggs, and fresh bread. She smiled at passengers as she offered them meals. Some politely declined, others thanked her warmly, and a few seemed distracted by their phones or conversations. When she reached Daniel's row, she handed him a tray quickly, trying to keep up with the pace. He looked at it carefully before picking up his fork. "Excuse me," he said in a calm voice. "I think this food might not be safe to eat." Maya froze for a moment, surprised by his politeness. She leaned slightly closer to look at the tray. Her heart sank when she realized that in her rush, she had handed him a meal that had been left out too long. The eggs had a slightly odd smell, and the bread had a faint sourness. "I am so sorry," she said, trying to hide her embarrassment. "Let me take that back and get you a fresh one." She turned quickly, pushing the cart toward the galley. But when she opened the storage area, she found that most of the replacement meals had been taken by other passengers. A small wave of panic swept through her. How could she fix this? She had never been in a situation where the food supply was so low, and she feared disappointing a passenger. Meanwhile, Daniel remained calm, not raising his voice or showing anger. He simply watched her, a quiet confidence in his expression. "It's not just about the food," he said gently. "It's about safety. You have to be honest with your passengers. Everyone on this plane deserves care." Maya swallowed, feeling the weight of his words. She knew he was right, but she also feared the reaction of her manager, Mr. Levin, who would not tolerate mistakes. She returned to Daniel with a new tray, trying to speak with confidence. "Here's another meal. I hope this one is fresh." Daniel looked at the tray and then back at her. He did not speak angrily, but instead gave a small nod. "Thank you. I hope this reaches everyone safely." His calm voice carried a firmness that made Maya pause. She realized that the problem was larger than just one tray of food. The cabin, meanwhile, had begun to notice a subtle tension. Some passengers whispered quietly to each other, curious about the exchange. A few glanced toward the aisle, trying to see if something unusual was happening. Maya felt the eyes of several passengers on her, and she knew the situation could escalate if not handled carefully. As she moved back to the galley to check the remaining supplies, Maya thought about the responsibilities of her job. She had served thousands of meals in her career, but this moment felt different. It was not just about serving food. It was about trust, honesty, and the safety of everyone on board. Daniel, sitting quietly by the window, observed the cabin. He could see the little boy across the aisle fidgeting with his toy airplane. He noticed a woman struggling with her bag in the overhead compartment. He realized that each passenger relied on the crew not only for comfort, but also for their well-being. His calm reminder to Maya was not criticism. It was an appeal to responsibility. Back in the galley, Maya found a few remaining trays that had not been touched. She quickly checked them, ensuring they were safe. The engines hummed steadily, and the plane glided through the clouds. Outside the window, the sunlight reflected off the tops of the clouds, painting the sky in soft shades of gold and white. When she returned to Daniel, she handed him one of the trays carefully. He accepted it and gave a small, polite smile. "Thank you. I appreciate your attention." Maya nodded, feeling a mixture of relief and lingering anxiety. She had avoided immediate conflict, but she knew that this incident could draw attention from the manager. Her mind raced with ways to prevent similar situations in the future. As she continued down the aisle to serve the other passengers, Maya realized how small actions could have large consequences. A single meal overlooked in a rush could affect the comfort and safety of dozens of people. She also noticed that Daniel's calm approach had influenced the passengers around him. Some were now watching attentively, respecting the quiet order he had maintained. For a brief moment, Maya allowed herself to breathe. The first hours of the flight passed with careful attention. She greeted passengers, checked their needs, and ensured that the cabin remained calm. The plane's gentle sway, the soft conversations, and the occasional laughter from children created a rhythm of normalcy. Yet the memory of the spoiled meal remained in her mind. Daniel, meanwhile, opened his notebook. He began to write, capturing the scene, noting details of the flight, and reflecting on the importance of small responsibilities. He did not write angrily. He wrote thoughtfully. His calm presence acted as a quiet reminder to everyone in the cabin, including Maya, that integrity and attentiveness mattered, even in situations that seemed minor. By the time the meal service was complete, Maya had regained her composure. She had learned a lesson in vigilance, patience, and honesty. She knew that her actions could influence not just one passenger, but the mood and trust of the entire cabin. The hum of the engines, the gentle sway of the plane, and the attentive eyes of the passengers reminded her that every flight carried responsibility beyond the obvious tasks. Daniel closed his notebook and looked out the window. The city below had faded into fields and forests, and the horizon stretched endlessly in soft blue and gold. The plane moved steadily, carrying people from one place to another, each with their own lives, their own stories, and their own expectations. Maya moved down the aisle one last time, making sure every passenger was comfortable. She felt a new respect for the small moments that defined her job. This flight, which had begun like any other, had already become different. A simple tray of spoiled food had created a situation that tested patience, honesty, and responsibility. Maya realized that even small mistakes could teach important lessons if approached with care and attention. Daniel's quiet insistence had reminded her of that truth. She continued her work with renewed focus, aware that the journey was not just about reaching a destination, but about ensuring that every passenger felt safe, respected, and valued. The cabin of Flight 742 was quiet after the breakfast service, but the calm was fragile. Maya returned to her duties, moving through the aisles with a careful attention that was sharper than usual. She checked passengers' seatbelts, offered extra drinks, and tried to reassure herself that the spoiled meal incident had ended. Yet she knew that one passenger's quiet observation could turn into a larger concern if handled poorly. Daniel sat by the window, his tray replaced with a fresh meal. He picked at his eggs thoughtfully, glancing occasionally at the other passengers. His demeanor was calm, but his eyes showed a focused attention to everything happening around him. He noticed small details that many might miss. A young woman across the aisle had spilled coffee on her bag. A man in the back was adjusting the overhead vent that would not stay closed. Children were fidgeting, some curious about the cabin, some restless. Daniel took note of these small details, not to criticize, but to understand how a small oversight could create larger consequences. Maya noticed his observant gaze. She felt both nervous and inspired. Nervous because she knew the manager, Mr. Levin, was very strict about service and protocol. Inspired because Daniel's calm approach reminded her that confrontation could be handled without anger or accusation. The moment of tension came when the little boy across the aisle accidentally dropped a small toy onto the floor. His mother leaned over trying to reach it, but the boy's seat was too high and he could not retrieve it. The child's face twisted in frustration, and a faint wail began to rise. Maya rushed to help, bending carefully to pick up the toy and handing it back to the boy. "Thank you," said the mother, smiling but still flustered. "It seems every little thing needs attention on this flight." Daniel, observing this, spoke softly to Maya. "It is easy to focus only on tasks, but passengers notice everything. How you handle small moments defines their experience." Maya nodded, absorbing the quiet lesson. She realized that the spoiled meal was not an isolated incident, but a reminder that attention to detail mattered in every part of the job. Suddenly, a voice came from near the front of the cabin. "Maya, can you come here for a moment?" It was Mr. Levin, the flight manager. His tone was sharp, though not angry yet. Maya's stomach sank. She took a deep breath and approached him, trying to appear calm. "Is everything okay?" she asked politely. "Sit down for a second," he said, gesturing toward an empty jump seat. "I was told about an incident with one of the meals." "Explain what happened." Maya swallowed nervously. "One tray was left out too long, sir. I realized it immediately and offered a fresh one to the passenger." "Everything is under control now." Mr. Levin's eyes narrowed slightly, but he did not interrupt. "Who is the passenger?" "Daniel, sir," Maya said quietly. "He was very calm about it. He asked me to ensure safety for all passengers." "Calm is one thing," Mr. Levin said. "Safety is another. We cannot have any doubts. Show me the remaining meals and their condition." Maya led him to the galley. Together they inspected the remaining trays. Some had already been served. Some were untouched. Mr. Levin examined the packaging, checked the temperatures, and finally nodded. "This is acceptable, but you need to ensure this never happens again. A single mistake could cause panic." Meanwhile, back in the cabin, Daniel noticed other passengers observing the exchange. A few whispered to each other, trying to understand what had caused the tension. Some passengers glanced at their trays, examining them carefully. Daniel realized that the situation had escalated, not because of anger, but because honesty and attention to detail had made people aware of a potential problem. The flight continued, but the atmosphere had shifted. Passengers were more attentive, more cautious. Maya moved through the aisles with a steady calm, offering drinks, answering questions, and helping passengers adjust. She felt a growing respect for Daniel's quiet insistence on safety. It had reminded her that responsibility was more important than rushing through tasks. An elderly man in the middle of the cabin raised his hand. Maya approached him. "Yes, sir? Can I help you?" "My tray seems fine," he said slowly. "But can you tell me about the spoiled meal? I heard there was a problem." Maya nodded, taking a deep breath. "Yes, sir. One meal was accidentally left out too long. It was noticed immediately and a fresh meal was provided. We are ensuring all meals are safe and the situation is under control." The man smiled, satisfied. "Thank you for explaining." "I appreciate honesty," Daniel observed silently, noting how the calm explanation reassured the passengers. Panic had not spread because honesty had been offered openly and respectfully. It reinforced his belief that confrontation could be handled with calm and clarity, rather than anger or blame. Moments later, a flight attendant from another aisle called Maya. "We need help. A woman spilled her drink and a child is crying." Maya moved quickly, offering assistance. She cleaned the spill, handed napkins to the mother, and handed a toy to the child. She realized that small gestures mattered as much as major ones. Each interaction shaped the passenger's experience and influenced how they perceived the crew's competence. Daniel continued to write in his notebook. He did not record complaints. He recorded observations and reflections. He wrote about calm communication, careful attention, and how small actions influenced larger outcomes. He noticed how Maya's demeanor changed after the incident with his meal. She was no longer just serving. She was observing, anticipating, and responding. Mr. Levin watched from the front of the cabin, still cautious but beginning to understand. He noticed that the situation had been handled without escalation. Daniel's polite insistence on safety had created awareness, but it had also inspired calm responsibility among the crew. As the flight reached cruising altitude, a few passengers began chatting again, some sharing stories and some reading quietly. Maya felt a sense of relief. The tension had not disappeared entirely, but it had transformed into careful attention. She continued her rounds, offering snacks and drinks, helping with seat adjustments and answering questions. Daniel's calm presence remained a quiet force. Even small actions, such as helping a passenger reach a window shade or offering advice on connecting flights, reflected his awareness of the cabin's needs. Passengers noticed, and some smiled appreciatively. The little boy across the aisle waved at Daniel, and he waved back gently. Maya realized something important. The incident with the spoiled meal was a small event, but it had become a defining moment for the flight. It had reminded the crew and passengers that attention, honesty, and calm communication mattered. She also realized that she had grown from the experience. She was more aware of the small details, more patient, and more committed to ensuring safety and comfort. Daniel closed his notebook for a moment, looking out at the clouds. The sunlight reflected on their soft tops, painting the sky in pale gold and white. He smiled quietly, satisfied that his calm approach had influenced the flight in a positive way. He did not seek recognition. His goal was to ensure that the situation was handled responsibly. The little boy leaned against his mother, finally calm. Passengers adjusted in their seats, some talking, some reading. Maya moved along the aisle, offering drinks and smiles. Mr. Levin observed from the front, now nodding subtly to himself. He recognized that sometimes a challenge could teach lessons not only to the crew, but also to the passengers. By mid-flight, the cabin had returned to a steady rhythm. Drinks were served, blankets offered, and conversations continued quietly. Maya felt a new sense of confidence in her role. She had faced an unexpected challenge, learned from it, and maintained calm under pressure. Daniel, observing everything, reflected on the subtle lessons that the flight had already provided. Small actions mattered. Honesty was respected, and calm communication could prevent panic. Even in a confined space like an airplane cabin, responsibility and awareness could influence everyone's experience. Maya glanced at Daniel once more as she passed. He offered a polite nod and a faint smile. She smiled back, silently acknowledging the lesson he had taught her. The flight continued smoothly, and although the incident with the spoiled meal was over, its impact remained. Every passenger, every crew member, and even the managers had witnessed the importance of calmness, honesty, and attention to detail. The flight had settled into a steady rhythm, yet an undercurrent of tension lingered. Maya continued her rounds, ensuring passengers had drinks, blankets, and comfort items. She tried to keep the cabin calm, but the incident with the spoiled meal had made her more aware than ever. Every movement, every word mattered now. Daniel, seated by the window, observed quietly. He noticed how passengers were now paying more attention to the crew. A few had pulled out their phones, not for entertainment, but to take notes or send messages. Conversations were subdued, cautious, almost as if everyone understood that something unusual had happened. Daniel's calm presence seemed to influence the atmosphere, keeping tension from escalating further. It was at this moment that a sudden commotion arose near the middle of the cabin. A woman had spilled her coffee across the tray table, and a faint smell of burnt toast from another meal triggered a few concerned looks from nearby passengers. The little boy across the aisle dropped his toy again, crying loudly. Maya rushed to help, wiping up the spill and handing the boy a clean toy. Her movements were quick but careful, and she spoke softly to calm the child. "Everything will be okay," she said gently. "We are here to help." The mother nodded gratefully, but Daniel noticed how a few passengers were beginning to murmur to each other. The whispers grew louder, fueled by concern. Some glanced at the galley, wondering if more meals were unsafe. Others questioned whether the crew could handle unexpected problems. Daniel realized the situation could spiral if not addressed properly. Maya took a deep breath and decided to act proactively. She moved to the front of the cabin and spoke with Mr. Levin quietly. "Sir, there is growing concern among passengers. I think it would be best if the captain made an announcement about safety and meal quality." Mr. Levin looked reluctant at first, but finally nodded. "Very well. Let's handle it carefully." Captain Rivera's voice came through the speakers moments later. "Good morning, passengers. This is Captain Rivera. Earlier, one of our meals was accidentally left out too long. We have ensured that all remaining meals are safe, and every passenger will receive a fresh tray. Your safety and comfort are our highest priorities. We thank you for your patience and understanding." The cabin quieted immediately. Passengers leaned back in their seats, some nodding, some smiling. Daniel observed the effect calmly. noting how a single announcement had restored trust and prevented panic. Maya felt relief as she moved back into the aisles, offering reassurance and fresh drinks. The hum of engines and the soft conversations of passengers slowly returned the cabin to order, but the relief was temporary. A few passengers began to call attention to minor issues, each small complaint magnified by the earlier incident. One man claimed his seatbelt did not latch properly. A woman said she had received the wrong meal. Another passenger complained that the cabin temperature was too cold. Maya and the rest of the crew worked quickly, addressing every concern with patience and care. Daniel noticed the subtle chaos and realized it was a test of leadership and coordination. The crew's ability to respond calmly determined whether the situation would escalate further. He rose slightly in his seat and spoke softly to Maya as she passed by. "Your calm and careful response is important. Every passenger is watching how you handle this." Maya nodded, grateful for his quiet encouragement. She moved from aisle to aisle, offering apologies where necessary, resolving minor problems and providing reassurance. Each interaction required careful attention. She had learned from the earlier incident that small details mattered. A spilled drink, a dropped toy, or a minor complaint could all influence the perception of the crew's competence. The little boy who had dropped his toy earlier was now happily playing with a replacement, giggling quietly. His mother smiled at Maya, a silent thank you passing between them. Daniel continued to observe, impressed by the crew's ability to adapt and respond. He understood that handling chaos required more than technical skill. It required empathy, patience, and calm authority. Mr. Levin moved down the aisle, speaking quietly with individual crew members. His usual strictness was softened by the situation. He nodded approvingly at Maya as she helped a passenger adjust a seatback tray. The manager's presence reassured passengers, but it also reminded the crew that their performance was under scrutiny. Daniel opened his notebook again, jotting down observations. He wrote about calm communication, attention to detail, and the influence of small gestures on overall perception. Each note reflected his understanding of human behavior in confined spaces. Even small mistakes or delays could ripple outward, affecting everyone on the flight. Meanwhile, a few passengers grew restless. They whispered loudly, questioning why the meal incident had occurred and whether other errors might follow. Maya approached them carefully, smiling and speaking in a calm voice. "We understand your concerns," she said. "Every measure has been taken to ensure your safety. Please know that we are here to assist you in any way we can." Her calm tone, paired with visible action, seemed to soothe most of the passengers. The murmurs gradually faded, replaced by soft conversations and quiet attention to personal devices or reading material. Daniel observed how small leadership actions could have a stabilizing effect. He noted that honesty, communication, and empathy could prevent a minor issue from becoming a major crisis. The flight continued, but the cabin was no longer entirely relaxed. Passengers were attentive, crew members alert, and Mr. Levin carefully observing every movement. Maya moved through the aisles with careful focus, checking on each passenger, ensuring that no further incidents occurred. She felt a renewed sense of responsibility. The earlier mistake had taught her that vigilance and calmness were essential at all times. Suddenly, the intercom clicked again. "Maya, please come to the front," Mr. Levin said, his voice calm but firm. Maya walked quickly, slightly anxious. "Sir?" she asked as she approached. "We need to address the passengers more directly," he said. "A few have concerns that need reassurance. You will speak to them along with me and Captain Rivera." Maya nodded. She had never spoken to passengers in such a formal capacity, but she understood the importance of calm authority. She and Mr. Levin moved to the front, and Captain Rivera joined them in the cabin aisle. Together, they addressed the passengers. "Ladies and gentlemen," the captain began, "we understand that there was concern earlier regarding a meal. We want to assure you that all remaining meals are safe. Our crew is fully prepared to assist with any needs or concerns. Your safety and comfort are our top priority," Maya added softly. "We apologize for the inconvenience earlier. Every precaution has been taken, and we are here to make sure your flight continues safely and comfortably. Please let us know if you need assistance at any time." The passengers responded with nods, some smiling, some quietly thanking them. Daniel noted how the combination of honesty, empathy, and calm authority had restored confidence in the cabin. The tension that had built over the past hour was now dissipating, replaced by cautious trust. As the flight continued toward its destination, Maya moved back through the aisles, helping where needed. She handed out extra drinks, adjusted pillows for sleeping passengers, and made small gestures to show attentiveness. Daniel, seated by the window, smiled faintly at her efforts. His earlier observation had proven correct. Calm, careful action influenced the entire environment. By the time the plane reached its cruising altitude, the cabin had returned to a steady rhythm. Passengers read, listened to music, or spoke quietly with neighbors. Children played with toys, parents smiled, and the soft hum of the engines provided a comforting background. Maya felt a sense of accomplishment. She had faced a test of patience, responsibility, and leadership, and she had learned how small actions could prevent chaos from spreading. Daniel closed his notebook and looked around the cabin. He saw passengers adjusting to the flight, crew members attentive and calm, and the little boy now happily playing. He knew the earlier tension had been necessary to reveal the crew's strength and the importance of careful observation. Small mistakes could lead to large consequences, but they could also provide opportunities to demonstrate competence, empathy, and calm authority. Maya walked to the galley for a brief moment of respite. She allowed herself a deep breath and reflected on the lessons of the morning. Each flight had its challenges, but this one had reminded her that responsibility, honesty, and empathy were as important as technical skill. She looked at the cabin one last time before returning to her duties. As Flight 742 continued toward its destination, the cabin was calm, passengers attentive, and the crew alert. The earlier chaos had been transformed into a quiet order, guided by careful observation, communication, and small but meaningful actions. Daniel, observing everything, felt satisfied. The incident with the spoiled meal had tested the cabin, the crew, and the passengers, and it had been handled with skill and calmness. The flight had finally found a rhythm, yet Maya knew the day was far from over. Passengers were calmer than before, but subtle tension remained in the cabin. Every face she passed carried a trace of awareness, a curiosity about how the crew would continue to manage the flight. Maya moved carefully, attentive to every movement, every question, and every need. She had learned that small gestures could prevent a situation from escalating. Daniel sat by the window, quietly observing. He noticed how each crew member responded to subtle changes in the cabin. Maya, in particular, moved with a combination of efficiency and empathy. She was attentive, patient, and calm. Daniel admired how her composure had shifted after the earlier incident. She no longer acted on routine alone. She acted with thought and awareness. The little boy across the aisle leaned against his mother, still playing quietly with his toy airplane. Nearby, a young couple whispered to each other, occasionally glancing toward the front where Mr. Levin and Maya were moving to ensure everything remained orderly. Daniel noted how these small details created the atmosphere of the cabin. People's trust depended on calm presence and careful observation. Suddenly, a passenger in the middle of the plane raised his hand. Maya approached him with a smile. "Yes, sir? Can I help you?" "My seat seems to be stuck," he said, pointing to the recline lever. "I cannot adjust it properly." Maya nodded. "I'll take care of it right away," she said. She crouched down carefully and examined the seat, adjusting the lever and making sure it worked smoothly. The man nodded gratefully and leaned back comfortably. Daniel watched silently, recognizing the importance of even these small tasks. Every gesture contributed to passengers' perception of care and competence. As Maya moved through the aisle, Mr. Levin spoke quietly with her. "You are handling this well," he said. "The passengers are watching. Even small gestures matter." "Keep your focus," Maya nodded. She understood that leadership was not only about giving instructions, it was also about demonstrating calm and care in every interaction. She continued down the aisle, helping passengers with small requests, handing out drinks, and offering assistance where needed. Daniel observed, noticing how even the smallest act, like handing a napkin or adjusting a blanket, influenced the overall atmosphere. Calmness, empathy, and attentiveness were spreading through the cabin. Passengers were beginning to relax. Children smiled, parents spoke softly, and the hum of the engines became a comforting background rather than a source of tension. However, not everyone was immediately reassured. A woman near the back called out in concern, "Excuse me, I'm worried about my meal. Can you guarantee it's safe?" Maya approached her with a calm voice. "Yes, ma'am. All meals have been checked. Every precaution has been taken. If you would like, I can bring you a fresh tray personally." The woman nodded, her expression softening. Maya returned to the galley, picked up a fresh meal, and served it carefully. The woman's eyes brightened, and she offered a small smile. Daniel noted how reassurance through direct action was as important as words. Honesty and care together restored trust quickly. Meanwhile, the little boy's mother whispered to Maya, "Thank you for helping him. He can be anxious on flights, but your attention keeps him calm." Maya smiled. "It is my pleasure. Every passenger matters, no matter their age," Daniel observed quietly, feeling a deep respect for Maya's dedication. Her ability to remain calm under pressure, to attend to everyone's needs, and to act with empathy had transformed the cabin from tension to calm. He realized that responsibility was not just about procedures. It was about connection and awareness. Suddenly, the plane encountered a patch of turbulence. The cabin shook lightly and the seatbelt signs flickered on. Passengers murmured, some gripping armrests, others glancing nervously around. Maya immediately moved through the aisles, helping passengers fasten seatbelts and offering reassurance. "Please remain seated," she said gently. "Everything is under control. The turbulence will pass shortly." Daniel noticed how her calm voice and steady movements reduced fear. Passengers adjusted, and even those who were nervous began to relax. The turbulence lasted only a few minutes, but it highlighted the importance of steady presence during unexpected events. After the turbulence passed, the captain made a brief announcement. "Ladies and gentlemen, the turbulence has cleared. We are back to smooth flight. Thank you for your cooperation." Passengers nodded, some smiling, and the cabin returned to quiet order. Maya moved back to her regular duties, checking drinks, offering blankets, and helping where needed. Daniel continued to write in his notebook, recording observations on human behavior, calm communication, and leadership. Mr. Levin approached Maya once more. "You have handled the challenges well. Passengers are responding positively. Your calm and attentiveness have prevented what could have been a major situation." Maya nodded, grateful for the acknowledgement. She understood that the lessons from this flight were more than just about handling meals or turbulence. They were about patience, responsibility, and awareness. Every interaction mattered, and every action could influence the experience of everyone on board. Daniel observed the crew's coordination closely. He noticed how subtle signals and small actions created a ripple effect. A smile, a calm voice, or a simple gesture could influence multiple passengers. He realized that leadership and responsibility often worked quietly, through observation and thoughtful action, rather than authority alone. The little boy, now asleep, leaned gently against his mother. Nearby passengers read quietly or engaged in soft conversation. The atmosphere had shifted completely. What had begun as a flight with tension and concern was now calm and orderly. Maya moved through the aisles with care, ensuring everyone was comfortable and attended to. Daniel smiled faintly. He had observed the impact of small but deliberate actions. Honesty, empathy, and calm communication had restored trust, even in a situation that could have spiraled into chaos. The flight was now a lesson in responsibility, patience, and the power of human connection. As the plane flew toward its destination, Maya found a quiet moment to reflect. She thought about how one small mistake, a single spoiled meal, had grown into a challenge that tested the crew, passengers, and herself. She realized that mistakes could teach valuable lessons if approached with honesty and care. She glanced at Daniel, who had returned to observing the cabin. He offered a small nod and a polite smile. Maya smiled back, silently acknowledging the role he had played. His calm insistence on attention and honesty had shaped the flight in a positive way. Passengers were beginning to settle for the long part of the journey. Some listened to music, some read, and some engaged in quiet conversation. Maya continued her rounds, offering drinks and snacks, adjusting seats, and attending to requests. She knew that even small interactions now mattered more than ever. Every gesture reinforced calm, order, and trust. Daniel closed his notebook for a moment and looked out the window. The clouds stretched endlessly, bathed in soft sunlight. The plane glided smoothly, carrying people who had begun the day with routine expectations but were now part of a shared experience shaped by care, honesty, and attentiveness. Maya paused to take a deep breath. She understood that the lessons from this flight were lasting. Responsibility, patience, and empathy were essential not only in emergencies, but in every small interaction. The cabin, once tense, was now calm, orderly, and even warm in its atmosphere. As the hours passed, Maya continued to serve, observe, and respond with care. Daniel remained quietly attentive, noting how calm presence could prevent panic and restore trust. Mr. Levin, satisfied with the crew's performance, watched discreetly, acknowledging the effectiveness of empathy and responsibility. By the time the flight began its descent, the cabin had transformed completely. Passengers were relaxed, children were calm or asleep, and the crew moved confidently and efficiently. Maya had learned that leadership, attentiveness, and honest communication could resolve potential chaos even in the most confined spaces. Daniel looked around once more, feeling a quiet satisfaction. The incident with the spoiled meal had tested everyone, but it had also taught valuable lessons. Calm communication, empathy, and careful attention had transformed tension into trust. Maya watched the passengers preparing for landing. She knew the journey was almost complete, but the lessons of the flight would stay with her. Every action, every gesture, and every word mattered. The flight had been a test, and everyone had passed with patience, care, and responsibility. The plane began its descent toward the airport, and the cabin hummed with a quiet, steady energy. Passengers fastened seatbelts, adjusted trays, and glanced out of the windows at the shrinking landscape below. Maya moved through the aisles one last time, offering assistance to anyone who needed it. She felt a mixture of relief and reflection. The flight had tested her patience, her attention, and her ability to maintain calm under pressure. Daniel sat quietly by the window, notebook closed, observing the cabin one final time. He noticed the relaxed smiles of passengers, the children adjusting in their seats, and the overall sense of order that had replaced the earlier tension. He reflected on the journey, understanding that the incident with the spoiled meal had become more than a mistake. It had become a test of responsibility, honesty, and attentiveness. Maya knelt briefly to help the little boy adjust his seatbelt. "Almost there," she said gently. "You did very well staying calm." The boy smiled faintly, proud of himself, and clutched his toy airplane. His mother whispered a quiet thank you, grateful for Maya's patient care. Daniel observed the interaction, impressed by the subtle impact that care and attention had on both children and adults. Mr. Levin approached Maya with a measured expression. "You handled the flight remarkably," he said. "Passengers were uneasy at first, but your calm actions and clear communication restored order." "That is the essence of good service," Maya nodded, grateful for his acknowledgement. "Thank you, sir. I learned a lot today about attention, patience, and how even small actions can influence a whole cabin." Daniel looked at both of them and spoke softly. It wasn't just the crew who maintained order. Passengers' trust grew because honesty and calmness were communicated openly. Every action reinforced confidence. Maya smiled faintly. "You're right. Your calm response earlier reminded me that we cannot underestimate the power of patience and honesty." As the plane descended further, passengers began preparing for landing. Carry-on bags were secured, seatbacks upright, and tray tables locked. The captain's voice came over the intercom. "Ladies and gentlemen, we are beginning our final approach. Thank you for your cooperation. We appreciate your understanding and patience during this flight." Passengers responded with polite nods, and some offered soft smiles to the crew. Maya moved along the aisles one last time, checking that everyone was comfortable. She noticed the elderly man who had questioned the spoiled meal earlier. He now nodded at her with a faint smile, signaling trust and gratitude. Daniel observed these small gestures, recognizing the significance of human connection in maintaining calm. A few passengers struck up quiet conversations, sharing relief and satisfaction that the flight had been handled professionally, despite the initial incident. Daniel noticed how these interactions reinforced a positive atmosphere. Even minor gestures of courtesy or acknowledgement had an effect on the overall mood. Maya returned to the galley briefly to organize supplies before landing. She reflected on the challenges of the flight. Each moment, from the spilled coffee to the crying child to the turbulence, had been an opportunity to practice patience, responsibility, and empathy. She understood that leadership was not only about giving instructions, but also about modeling calm behavior in every interaction. The little boy's mother whispered something to him. and he waved at Maya with a bright smile. She waved back, feeling a deep sense of accomplishment. The child's smile, the passenger's nods, and the quiet confidence of Daniel all reinforced that small actions had a lasting impact. As the landing gear extended and the plane aligned with the runway, the cabin grew quiet in anticipation. Maya returned to her seat near the front, fastening her seatbelt and preparing for landing. Daniel closed his notebook and leaned back, reflecting on the lessons of the flight. Calmness, honesty, and attention to detail had transformed potential chaos into order. Mr. Levin watched the crew and passengers, satisfied with the outcome. He realized that the incident had provided valuable insight into how small mistakes could test the entire system. More importantly, he saw that thoughtful action and calm leadership could prevent minor issues from escalating. The plane touched down smoothly, rolling along the runway as passengers released sighs of relief. Maya stood quickly to assist those in the aisles, helping passengers gather their belongings and ensuring that the disembarkation was orderly. Daniel observed silently, noting how the crew's careful attention maintained the cabin's calm through the final moments of the flight. When the plane reached the gate, Maya moved efficiently, guiding passengers to the exit while making sure no one was left behind. Daniel collected his bag and followed her lead, quietly observing how every gesture contributed to a seamless landing experience. Once the cabin doors opened, passengers began to leave the plane. Many offered polite thanks to Maya and the crew. Some paused to nod at Daniel, recognizing his quiet influence in helping maintain order. The little boy waved, and Maya waved back, feeling a warm sense of satisfaction. As the last passengers exited, Mr. Levin approached Maya once more. "You demonstrated what it means to handle responsibility under pressure," he said. "You maintained calm, ensured safety, and reassured passengers. That is exemplary work." Maya nodded, feeling the weight of the compliment. She realized that the lessons from the flight extended beyond her role as a flight attendant. They were about responsibility, patience, and the quiet power of attentive action. Daniel approached her as well. "Thank you for your careful work," he said. "It was clear that your attention and calmness prevented chaos from spreading. Your actions influenced everyone on this flight." Maya smiled. "And your calm approach earlier reminded me to prioritize honesty and attentiveness. Without your patience, this could have escalated more quickly." Daniel nodded politely. Sometimes even small mistakes can become opportunities to learn. Today, everyone learned something valuable. Maya glanced back at the plane, now quiet and empty of passengers. She reflected on the morning's events. The spoiled meal, the small spills, the turbulence, all had been challenges, but each had provided a lesson. Calmness, honesty, empathy, and careful attention had transformed potential chaos into a positive experience for everyone on board. Daniel turned toward the exit, his notebook tucked under his arm. Before leaving, he paused and handed Maya a small note. She opened it and read silently. "Integrity, patience, and attention to detail shape every outcome. Always act with care." Maya smiled, folding the note carefully and tucking it into her pocket. She understood that this simple reminder would stay with her throughout her career. Every flight, every passenger, and every interaction mattered. Even small gestures could have a lasting impact. The crew gathered outside the plane, taking a moment to reflect on the flight. Maya exchanged quiet words of encouragement with fellow attendants. They had faced challenges together and emerged stronger, more aware of their responsibilities. The lessons of the day were not only practical but also deeply human. Honesty, empathy, and calmness could guide everyone through unexpected difficulties. Daniel walked away from the plane, leaving behind a subtle mark on the flight without seeking recognition. Maya watched him go, grateful for his presence. He had reminded her that responsibility and calmness mattered as much as technical skill. His quiet influence had shaped the flight's outcome. As the airport buzzed with activity around them, Maya felt a deep sense of fulfillment. She had managed the challenges of the flight, learned valuable lessons, and witnessed the power of empathy and honesty in action. The spoiled meal incident had become more than a mistake. It had become a moment of growth, reflection, and understanding for everyone involved. By the end of the day, Maya returned home with a renewed sense of purpose. She thought about the passengers, the crew, and Daniel's quiet guidance. Every flight was an opportunity to practice responsibility, patience, and careful attention. She understood that her actions influenced more than just one passenger. They shaped the experience of the entire cabin. Daniel, meanwhile, reflected on the flight in his own way. He recognized how calm presence, observation, and careful communication could transform tension into trust. The experience reinforced his belief that small actions, when performed thoughtfully, could create meaningful change. As the evening sky glowed softly with the setting sun, the events of the flight became a story of learning, growth, and human connection. Maya had learned the importance of honesty, attentiveness, and empathy. Daniel had reinforced the value of calm, measured action. The passengers had experienced safety, care, and reassurance. And together, these moments had turned potential chaos into a story of responsibility and trust. The flight that began with tension and uncertainty ended with lessons carried quietly in the hearts of everyone involved. Maya, Daniel, the crew, and the passengers all emerged with a deeper understanding of how calmness, honesty, and careful attention could shape human experiences, even in the confined space of a plane at 30,000 feet.